Today you're going to learn a single rule from Robert Fischer that allows you to minimize blunders, lose less often, and increase your chess performance in no time. So let's think about the current position that we can see right now on the board. It is white to play. How would you play if you're playing white? Just think about that for a second, and then we'll move on and see what happened in the actual game. It's a very common position, and that's why I picked it. In the current example, white decided to trade off bishops, so he took here, black recaptured. After that, white played knight to h1. Don't ask me why. And here, black could play knight to h3, which is a little tactics opening up the f-file for his other pieces. And after this little combo, black manages to win a pawn, as well as open up the king, destroy white's pawn structure, knight d4 is coming, and overall, black is having a great advantage. So that's what happened in real game, and in a little while, we will see what should have happened instead. Here's another example. This time the position is completely different. It is black to play, and still I'm going to ask you to think about this for a second and to suggest a move that you would play here if you were to play black. I'll give you a few seconds to think about this. In the game, black played attempting move rook b2, which attacks a bunch of pawns on the second square, on the second rank. But unfortunately, after h5, it turns out that white has a very simple checkmating plan to go h6 and queen g7. And actually, there is not much black can do to stop this. So h6 is coming, followed by queen to g7 checkmate. Black captures it. This just exposes the king, and white can attack it in different ways. Maybe knight g5, followed by queen h6, queen takes h7, and black is defenseless, and he's going to lose. As far as I can see, when people lose games like that, they often think that they need to solve more tactical puzzles, or they need to find a way to avoid blunders, or something else, or that maybe they miscalculated. But the reality is, in both cases, you can see that there was one common pattern. White had a piece here in black's half of the board. If we assume last 4 ranks to be black's territory, then there is clearly one piece of white which is standing onto this territory, which is the queen on f6, and it is the most active piece of white because it is the most advanced piece of white. It is closer to black's position, and therefore it is putting pressure here along these diagonals, and yes, it is potentially ready to create some checkmating threats. So here is the Fischer's rule. If you see an opponent's piece on your half of the board, you're gonna need to neutralize it. And also a similar idea, generally speaking, it is always useful to ask yourself, what is the most active piece of my opponent, and try to neutralize it. You can neutralize it by exchanging it or attacking it and pushing it back. So in this position, black could have played queen to e7, simply offering the trade of queens, and after that, that would neutralize the attack right away, and black's position would be completely fine. Going back to the previous example, we can see that black's most active piece, which stands on white's half of the board, is this knight on f4. And as long as it stays here, it'll always create some unpleasant threats and opportunities for you to blunder something. And therefore, it makes sense for you to think about ways to neutralize this knight. And that's the first thing you should think about when you are looking at a position like that. For instance, white could try to play knight e2, offering an exchange of knights. And if knights are traded off, white's position would be completely safe. Since this is Fischer's rule, let's see how Fischer himself used it in his own games. In this case, he's playing black against Donald Byrne playing white. It was black to play. There was this queen on h6, white's most advanced, most active piece, and black's got to find a way to neutralize it. Now, you can either exchange it, so move such as queen to g7 may come to mind, or attack it, trying to push it back. And in the game, Fischer played knight to g4, attacking the queen this way with a knight. By the way, you may wonder, this queen does not create any checkmating threats right now. Why would I need to really exchange it or do something about it? Like, my king is defended, I've got all these pieces around, so there is no checkmating threat. Well, it kind of reminds me that old saying that a smart man knows how to get out of trouble and a wise man doesn't get into trouble, and that's kind of how you apply it into chess. So it's just easier to play that way so that you are proactive and you prevent yourself from getting into troubles in the future. Here he just played knight to g4, attacking the queen. White decided to play queen g5 check, black covered queen g7, and now white finally decided to trade off queens. And as a result of this little operation, black is still a pawn up in an endgame, there is no danger, and Fischer converted this extra pawn later to a winning game. This one is an absolutely brilliant example of how you utilize this idea in different positions. Fischer was playing white against Barkzai. It was white to play. There's clearly this knight on e4, most active piece of black, and therefore we know we gotta neutralize it. Fischer is going knight to d2, attacking this knight twice, and black was willing to trade it off. Cool. After that, black played bishop to f5. Now, what's black's most active piece in the current position? Let's think about this for a second. Probably it is this bishop on f5. Although it is not located into white's territory, into white's half of the board, it still fires at white's territory. And theoretically, it is unpleasant, and you still could blunder something, let's say, by playing queen to c2 inaccurately if it's a blitz game. Alright, so what do you do when there is opponent's active piece that's shooting at your territory? It's still advisable to trade it off. And Fischer goes bishop c2. Even though in the current position it may be said that this is like a bad bishop of black because of the pawns on that color, but still Fischer is willing to trade it off. Now after this exchange, black played rook c8. Now if we're looking at black's position, there aren't really any very active pieces, and strictly speaking white could not worry about it that much. But if we were to care about some pieces that could come to our territory, there's only one that could go knight c4 and start inflating our position. Fischer is playing b3 to prevent it altogether, so that this knight can never go there, and his territory of the board, these first 4 ranks, are completely secure of black's any pieces. The great advantage of this method is that you don't have to be a brilliant tactical player, you don't need to calculate variations, you don't need to visualize anything, you've simply been smart and lazy in a good way, right? So you don't want to overwork yourself, you've secured everything up front, and now you can just sit back, relax, and enjoy a comfortable position. Black played knight to d7, and now after white secured his position completely, there is no danger, he then started to think about his active actions, and he marched forward with pawn to e6, trying to do something active. After this exchange, now white's rook on e6 is already putting some pressure over here. Black tried to counterattack, and there were different ways for white to handle this. Fischer played bishop a5, quite a creative way. It's not even a sacrifice, because after queen takes a5, white can get back this bishop on e7. This actually happened in the game. Queen takes, rook takes here. Now white has this active rook on the 7th rank, putting pressure, attacking the knight. Black played queen to d8, hoping that the rook would go back, but Fischer played a nice counter-strike, knight to g5, threatening queen takes h7 checkmate. Together with a knight, that would actually be a checkmate, and black just resigned here. So that's how seemingly simple white converted his attack. Oh, by the way, what if knight of 6? Let me ask you, how would you play here if you were white? Let this be our puzzle of the day. Why did black resign? How would you play here if you're white? Once I spent a lot of time analyzing strong chess players, my most successful students, and the rest, trying to figure out what differentiates that group of high chess performers. And I found 9 key differences of what allows people to get to the next level in chess. And if you enjoyed this lesson, I think that you might enjoy that one as well. It's called The Secrets of Strong Players. It's my complete chess course. And if you're curious, you may get all the details in the description below the video and then decide if you like to study it or not. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.